Hi guys, I'm so excited to finally sit down and share my entire testimony with you all about how Jesus completely saved my life. So yeah, I'll just get right into it. I was gonna start out by giving you guys a little bit of background info and just sharing my story of a lot of what I went through as a child that resulted in me just being at such a low, negative, dark place so many times. So I was born to teen parents who both struggled with addiction problems, and they split up when I was a year old. And I went to live with my dad in another state, and then when I was 2 years old, my dad passed away in a car accident. So I lost my dad at 2 years old, and because of that, growing up, I just always had a huge void in me that later on would lead to me looking for love and all kinds of things in all the wrong places, just because I had never had that secure love and validation that a child needs from their parents. And so after my dad died, I went in foster care briefly and then to live with family for a couple years. And then when I was about 4 years old, my mom got custody back of us. And so then after that, my mom wound up meeting a man online who was 27 years older than her. And she decided we were going to move to Florida to live with him, and he would be my new dad. And he was not the best person. He was very emotionally and verbally abusive from the time I was 5 years old until I stopped living with him at around 15, 16. And so yeah, on top of that, our home was just very toxic. They didn't have a healthy relationship, either my mom and him, and so it was just a really toxic environment. At times there would be physical abuse and just overly physical punishment, and it just was not healthy. And because of this, my mental health suffered so much once I got into my teen years. And so yeah, in my early teens, I started to struggle with things like suicidal thoughts randomly and stuff. I started to struggle with self-harm. I started to struggle with an eating disorder. It started out as anorexia, and then it later turned into bulimia. And yeah, and so because of this, I don't want to skip ahead too much. So I was just really depressed and suicidal. And then when I was 14, I got my first serious boyfriend. And so I got into a relationship with this guy, and we dated for almost a year. And then when we broke up, I was just so depressed and heartbroken. Now I realized that we probably had soul ties between us that were unbroken, and so it was making it really hard for me to let go of that relationship, even though I had known it wasn't like good and that we shouldn't be together anymore and stuff. It was just so hard for me. And so I had, my mental health had gotten better while I was in that relationship, but when it ended, I just fell apart and my mental health got so bad. And I didn't realize that at the time, but now I realize I was being severely demonically attacked and demonically oppressed in this time. And what does that look like? Well, for me, I just remember it was like a 2-month span. I went from being happy in the relationship to us breaking up, and then I was just so depressed. Every single day I would have negative thoughts just constantly in my head. I couldn't focus in school. I would have so many negative thoughts telling me I should hurt myself, I should starve myself, telling me all these horrible things, breeding self-hatred in me, and so many other things. And so about 2 months after this, it all culminated into what was then labeled a suicide attempt, but looking back, I see now that it was a huge demonic attack upon my life. And so I'll give you a brief summary of what happened, but I'll probably share, a deeper story about it later on. So my mom had left to go pick my sister up for work, and my sister, when she got back, my sister came into our bathroom and they found me on the floor, and I woke up out of this lost state of consciousness I was in basically, and I felt like I had been locked in my bathroom for hours and hours trying to break out, basically, like rolling all over the place, trying to get out. It was freezing ice cold. It was so horrible. But in reality, I'd only been in there for about 15 to 20 minutes, and I couldn't remember anything that happened for hours preceding this event, like 3 to 4 hours preceding this. And yeah, so basically they took me to the hospital. They couldn't get me stabilized there, and so then they transferred me to the children's hospital about an hour away, and I spent 9 days in the hospital, 4 of which were in ICU. And after test after test, it was determined I'd had a heart attack at 14 years old. And it was labeled a suicide attempt at the time because I had been incredibly depressed and suicidal, and I acknowledged that and stuff. And so I believed too that it might have been a suicide attempt, but there was nothing around me, like no evidence of anything I used to hurt myself or anything like that. And knowing what I know now, I now understand that it was a demonic attack, that, and practically possession probably, that severely attacked me and tried to end my life, and led to a snowball effect of so many other negative things happening. And so after this happened, I was Baker acted and sent to a temporary like mental health facility for a few days, and I was put on antidepressants. And then because I had the idea in my mind that I had attempted suicide, a couple weeks after I got home, I actually did attempt suicide, and I took 8.5 grams of Tylenol and overdosed and went to the hospital, and they had to give me medication and all this stuff to help me get better. And then I was sent to another temporary psychiatric hospital for about 5 days. And during this time, I was still like cutting myself a lot, had an eating disorder, and was just struggling so much with my mental health. And my home environment was just still like really toxic and neglectful and emotionally and just chaotically abusive at times. And so yeah, basically after this, I just started to look for love in all the wrong places and look to guys and stuff to fill the void that was in me at a really young age, and did so many things that I regretted and built a really bad reputation for myself. And before this, I had been like a straight A student, going to like a gifted school and stuff like that. And I excelled in school, and it was like my safe place from being at home where I never wanted to be. But after this happened, I started to develop a negative reputation for myself and stuff, and my mental health was suffering so much that it was like impossible to do my schoolwork and stuff on the level I was before. That I wound up having to switch schools, which was just really hard for me. And I was just changing so much because of the medications I was on. They made me extremely socially anxious, and it made me so withdrawn and like impossible to make any friends or anything. And so I was just in a really negative, dark place at that time. And then the summer before my junior year, my parents all of a sudden blindsided me, and sent me to, I was actually, so a little backstory, I was getting better from my mental illness at this point. Like I wasn't cutting myself, I wasn't doing like eating disorder behaviors, I'd been seeing therapists, I'd been taking my medications. All of a sudden they blindsided me and sent me to a long-term psychiatric facility, and I was there for 2.5 months, the summer before my junior year of high school. And so that in itself was like a traumatic experience, basically being locked up against my will in a psychiatric hospital. Just, yeah, that's a whole nother story, a whole nother video. But it was definitely a crazy experience, and just goes to show you, you know, like the kind of place I was at mentally and just all the things I was going through. So when I got out of this facility, my parents decided I should go live with my boyfriend at the time. Keep in mind, we had only been dating for 2 months prior to me being sent to the mental hospital, where I couldn't communicate with him at all the whole time. But they decided I should go live with him and his family because they lived closer to our school and could give me rides to school in the morning. And so I got sent there to live with him. A couple months later, wound up going back to live with my parents because they moved closer, and his parents were like, there's no point in you being here if your parents can take you to school in the morning. Like, so I went back to live with my parents. It wound up turning really abusive and toxic once again. And so like right before Christmas in my junior year, I left and I went back to live with his family, and I stayed there until a little bit after I graduated high school. And so yeah, during this time I was just like so alone, and I didn't really have anybody I could talk to emotionally or for support or anything after everything I had been through. My boyfriend at the time didn't really understand my past traumas and mental health struggles, and he just thought I should be happy because I lived with him and his family now, and he didn't really like offer me much emotional support. Not that I expect that from somebody that age and stuff, but basically my point is I didn't really have anybody. And so luckily though, this is what pushed me to start believing in God and just trying to like be more positive and stuff, and just hopeful that there was a God out there and stuff. And so around this time, I had decided and like could tell, you know, that this guy I was with wasn't really who I was met with, but I was kind of like stuck with him because I was living with him and his family in high school, and I couldn't go support myself. I wasn't even old enough to get an apartment or anything like that. And so I was just kind of stuck there, and I started developing feelings for another guy that I worked with. And for 9 months I had feelings for him and stuff before I turned 18 and was able to end things with my high school boyfriend and move out. And so when I went and told this other guy that I had feelings for him, he felt the same way, and he offered to let me come stay with him. And since I didn't have anywhere else to go, I wound up moving in with him. And this was right when I turned 18 basically. And that guy is my now fiance, about to be husband, next week. So yeah. Probably by the time I put this video up, he'll be my husband. So this is where the story starts to get a little bit better, but not completely. Yeah, so my fiance was raised Christian and stuff, but as he got older, he had, you know, just gotten a little bit lost due to his own life experiences and stuff. And he was just getting into the new age ideologies and stuff. And I believed in a couple things like that before we got together, like astrology and stuff. But I didn't really believe in it a ton. But as we got together, we both kind of grew more and more into new age practices and philosophies, believing in things like Christ consciousness, crystal healing, meditation, yoga, all kinds of things. And while we knew that certain things weren't safe and stuff, like tarot and spirit guides and all that, we were still lost in a ton of new age practices. And at this time, or a year into our relationship, we wound up having a child, or I got pregnant, and then about a year later we had a child. And right after I had my son, I started to develop more my mental illness again. It started coming back, or postpartum problems came. And because of this, around the same time, I'd gotten really into like living a natural lifestyle and all this stuff. And so I got all into looking for natural healing methods and things that would help me to like heal my trauma and like my mental illness, because I realized that most of it was rooted in my childhood and the things that I had went through. And so I started pursuing a lot of different new age practices, like yoga, practically every day. I would do crystal chakra meditations and stuff. I got really into astrology and studying like natal charts of myself and those around me, and using that information to influence my decisions or how I saw myself and other people. And so yeah, I just got really into it. I smoked weed for over 4 years, which heavily influenced like my mindset, and just yeah, it also would trigger like anxiety and stuff for me. And that's basically what I'm going to, is that the more I got into all these new age practices, my mental health just kept deteriorating more and more. I started having severe anxiety and panic attacks like every single day. I would wake up in the morning just like shaking with anxiety, and I thought that I was just like developing PTSD or something from my childhood, and that I just needed to like heal from the trauma and stuff. But in reality, I was being demonically attacked because of everything I was doing, and because of the generational curses and generational spiritual just junk that was in my family line and in my partners. And we were also, you know, fornicating and being intimate without being married and stuff, which is another negative open door for the enemy to come into your life. So yeah, while this was all going on, we had believed in God the whole time. We had our faith and stuff. We just didn't believe in the Bible, and I didn't know Jesus Christ. Like, my fiance knew about Jesus from his childhood and stuff, but I was never raised Christian. I never really went to church growing up. I didn't really know Jesus Christ at all. I didn't know who he was, what he did, or why he was so important. Yet simultaneously, I was trying to achieve Christ consciousness by raising my vibe, you know, which makes no sense. And there are so many people out there that are in a place just like me. They're being taught, oh, you know, Jesus just is like a guru who represents this elevated state of consciousness we can all obtain, but then they don't actually go and learn anything about what that guru did or who he was. And because if they did, they would realize he is not just a guru, he is God in the flesh. But anyway, so we actually also knew already about spiritual warfare, and we knew about demonic oppression and demonic attacks and such, but we didn't realize that all the things we were doing were opening us up to them more. And so basically last year in 2020, I just kept struggling so much with my mental illness, and I reached a point where I felt like my relationship with my fiance and the father of my son wasn't healthy, and just like overnight, all of a sudden, I felt like I need to end it, I need to get out. It wasn't helping me. I was like feeding off of fear and stuff, and yeah, and that's where things just got worse and worse, basically, because I started to not feel good in my relationship. I tried to end things with him, which didn't work out, obviously. He convinced me, you know, let's try to work on things, give things a chance. And I was like, okay, I mean, I guess it's fair. I just realized there were things I wasn't really happy with and stuff that he worked on, so might as well put some time into it. So I committed to giving us a year to work on our problems. And he began to change and stuff, but because of everything that was going on, there are some things we've done that I haven't talked about. I'll talk about maybe in the future when I feel ready to share my testimony regarding that stuff. I started to become really lustful and just fell into lustfulness, basically, and that was part of what was leading me back again and again to, I shouldn't be in this relationship, I need to leave. And so yeah, what started out as my trauma being what was trying to be manipulated to make me break up my family, then it turned into lustfulness, trying to manipulate me to break up my family. So yeah, this whole time for the last 6 months of 2020, I was still struggling with extreme panic attacks, just extreme like episodes of just going into like insane mental state. It was to the point where I was convinced I was having like seizures at times. Like, I just knew something was wrong with me, and I didn't know what it was, but I just knew I needed help. I would have gotten therapy and stuff if I had the money, but who can afford that stuff? They charge so much for it. And so yeah, I was just in a really dark place, but every single day, even though I was lost in the new age, I would be praying to God and just begging him for help every single day. Every morning when I was out doing my yoga, I'd be praying to God and asking him, you know, to help me to make the right decision and to not do the wrong thing. And so yeah, towards the end of 2020, there was actually a girl I was friends with who was starting to get into a bunch of negative things that I knew weren't safe, like spirit guides and tarot cards and calling on your ancestors and stuff. And so I tried to gently let her know, like, hey, that stuff isn't safe. You could open doors to demons and stuff in your life, which I knew because my fiance had a friend who became possessed in front of him, and so we knew about demonic attacks, we knew about spiritual warfare. And so after she like messaged me back or whatever, wrote me off, didn't really like care, and like, it's all good, you know, I planted a seed regardless. But anyways, after that, I stumbled into the hashtag New Age to Jesus, and I started to look at testimonies and experiences other people had that led to them leaving those kind of practices for Jesus. And when I did so, I realized, wow, I'm doing a lot of these things myself. It's more than just spirit guides that aren't saved. Neither is crystal meditations. Neither is yoga. And I wound up watching Jenny Weaver. If you don't know who she is, go check her out. She has an incredible testimony of how she left witchcraft and drug addiction and got saved by Jesus. And a couple years after being a Christian, she wound up getting delivered from demons that were in her. Basically, even as a Christian for 2 years, she had demons in her, attacking her and oppressing her in her life. And so that was like a huge wake-up call to me. I got saved like right then and there. Watching the video, I within a couple weeks started giving up all those things in my life, and I prayed to God to connect me to a good church, and I started seeking out deliverance. And I did my own self-deliverance using some videos and stuff from ministries online. I will link some great ministries below and some great videos you can watch to learn more about this. But yeah, I started seeking out deliverance and got a one-on-one virtual deliverance session. I went to a local church that I'm still part of and still go to now, and got some deliverance there and stuff. And my life just started to change so much. All my daily panic attacks were gone. They've stayed gone. I was finally able to, within a couple months of getting saved, it wasn't an instant thing. It took time to process, and for the Holy Spirit to help me to realize that it was the cause of a lot of my anxiety and stuff. I was able to give up smoking weed as an idol and as a something I was dependent on to help my mental health. I was able to give that up after doing that for 4 years, because Jesus helped my mental health so much. Jesus became what I run to when I'm struggling and need something to help me calm down. And praise God, Jesus changed everything for me. And so that's why I'm sitting here today sharing my testimony with you all, because it was somebody else's testimony like this that got me saved. And I'm going super fast today. I made a first video and it was a lot longer than this, but I kind of sped through things this time and didn't like get as detailed about everything. So if there's anything specific you guys want to know more about that I mentioned in my testimony, feel free to link it below. I'm also going to link my faith page where I've shared little bits and pieces of this story and bits and pieces of evidence and biblical understanding of why certain practices like astrology, yoga, crystals, etc. aren't safe for Christians or really anybody, because even if you're not a Christian, most people who aren't Christians and most people in the New Age are all spiritual. And so if you're spiritual, you should be aware that there are negative sides of spirituality. And so this stuff is just as important and should be just as interesting to you to learn about as it is to people who are Christians. Because you don't want demons in your life. You don't want to be having crazy panic attacks every day and thoughts of self-harm because you're being attacked by demons. You know, nobody wants that, and I don't want that for anybody else. And Jesus doesn't want that for you. And that's why he wants to set you free. When you accept him into your life, believe in him wholeheartedly. Believe that he's the divine Son of God, that he was God in the flesh here on earth, that he was resurrected from the dead, and you'll be saved for eternity, and he will start to move in your life and transform you like he's done for me and like he's done for countless other people. And so yeah, my relationship's gotten completely better and stuff. Is it perfect? No, we still have struggles, and we're still, you know, both learning how to communicate healthier and stuff to one another, and to just overall have a healthier relationship and such. But it's definitely gotten a million times better, and I no longer am struggling with all those thoughts of like, I need to leave this relationship and break up my family to be healthier, because the reality is that wouldn't have helped my mental health. It would have resulted in a lot more stress, and my mental health probably would have stayed the same, because that wasn't the root reason as to why I was struggling so much. And so yeah, that's my testimony. Just trying to think if there's anything that I left out and need to mention. Alright, I think that's all for today. So thank you guys so much for watching. And I just pray that the Lord uses this testimony to speak to you and to help convict you that, you know, He is good and He is just and He is loving, He is forgiving, and that He wants a relationship with you. He doesn't want you to follow a man-made religion. He wants a relationship with you personally because He created you. And so, yeah, that's my testimony. That's my message for today. Have a blessed day, guys. Love you so much.